Mr. Adamson, the IMO 2020 has placed a very strict low sulfur cap, and the compliances can be a challenge for both ship owners as well as for the shipping industry in general. What are the options that the ship owners have, and what are the strategies that they may apply in order to meet this compliance criteria?
Well, essentially there are two options. One is to use so-called compliant fuel, and the other is to fit your ship with an exhaust gas cleaning system, which is generally known as a scrubber. And the shipping industry can use either of those two strategies to comply with the requirements.
How close or how far are we from installing these systems in the already existing ships? Because there is an issue of economics as well into that.
Yeah, that's really a question you have to put to the shipping industry. IMO is the regulator, so IMO makes the regulations, it sets the standards that the shipping industry needs to comply with, and it does that based on what its member states want to be achieved in terms of health benefits and in terms of environmental benefits. Now, how far the industry has got in complying with those things is really up to the industry. IMO itself does not get involved in that. IMO is the regulator. I mean, sure, it helps the industry. It's developing guidelines, it's developing best practice, but it's not actually directly involved in the implementation. That's down to the member states of IMO and the industry itself.
Most of the member states of the IMO, though, do they actually bear in mind the economic effects that this may have on the shipping industry itself, and then set the standards through you?
Well, IMO has 174 member states, and each one of those will have its own priorities and its own particular requirements that it brings. Some of those may be driven more by the economics of shipping, and some may be driven more by the environment. But what comes out of IMO is a consensus agreement among those member states, which the shipping industry must then comply with, and which is enforced by the member states. So, to answer your question, I think some individual member states will have higher priorities as far as the economics of shipping is concerned than others. But IMO's overall mission statement, as far as this is concerned, as far as these areas are concerned, is to prevent and control pollution of the environment from shipping.
Does the IMO have the potential and the authority, if you like, to apply and enforce those compliance regulations on the shipping owners and the shipping industry in general as well?
No, it doesn't. The responsibility and the ability to monitor and put into effect compliance lies with the member states. So what will happen is that there'll be an international set of regulations, a convention devised at IMO by the member states, but they will individually put that into their own national legislation, and they'll apply it to their own ships and to their own ports and their own coastal areas with their own penalties for non-compliance and their own enforcement mechanisms. So no, it's not something that IMO does, it's something that the member states do.
IMO has set a certain goal to cut by 50% the gas emissions by 2050. How far or how close are we from actually achieving this goal?
Well, it's really early stages yet. The so-called initial strategy, that was only adopted this year. And the idea is that the initial strategy leads to a revised strategy in 2023. So what we've got this year is a requirement or a request for the member states to put forward some very specific proposals to the next meeting of IMO's Marine Environment Committee, which meets in May 2019. So we're just at the very beginning of that whole process. So there's nothing concrete yet, but hopefully we'll start to see from next year some concrete proposals coming from the member states.
Finally, what is your view on the 8th Annual Capital Link Forum?
Well, it's been a lot of fun. I've certainly found the questions have been very informed. People here really know what they're talking about, and they're not afraid to put you on the spot. So for me, it's been enjoyable and challenging.
Have you actually been put on the spot?
Yes, indeed, I have. And, hopefully I've done my best to answer the questions that were put to me.